Hello everyone, welcome to the 180 Jury Charge and Literary. We're going to start off with a paragraph using legal terms, so really focus on juror, which is J-A-O-R, bailiff, B-L-I-F, and courtroom, K-R-A-O-M. Ready? There are several individuals in the courtroom at the time of trial. These include not only the judge, the attorneys, the plaintiff, the defendant, and the witnesses, but several other individuals whose presence is necessary. The clerk of the court keeps a record of each case that is tried. The clerk administers the oath to the jurors and swears in each of the witnesses. The bailiff or other courtroom attendants maintain order in the courtroom and remain on call to assist the judge in carrying on the business of the court. The court reporter records verbatim all testimony and colloquy. Okay, moving right along. I've got an article here, and this is called Born to Race. Ready? Brenda Smith in lane 3, the voice boomed over the loudspeaker. The crowd cheered, and Brenda's heart began pounding in her throat. She eyed the Australian and German freestylers whose records had stunned her when she arrived in Barcelona to compete in the Games, or in the Paralympic Games, the world's premier competition for disabled athletes. Now she peered down the 50 meters that lay between her and a medal, and time stopped. From a distance of 26 years, she heard the shout of a little girl named Brenda Levy, born with spina bifida. "I'm going to jump, and you can't stop me." Everyone froze at the Silver Spring pool on a beautiful June morning. Brenda Levy, a beautiful 8-year-old with black pigtails and naughty brown eyes, teetered on the high dive. Her crutches lay at the bottom of the ladder. In unison, the child's mother, Gladys Levy, and her aunt and uncle, Roz and Mel, shouted, "Brenda, no, not the high dive." Brenda grinned wickedly. Nothing made her want to do something more than being told that she couldn't. What was another spanking compared to being able to fly 20 feet in the air? Whopping with delight, she sailed out over the water. When she surfaced unhurt, her Uncle Mel was shaking his head. He didn't realize what he'd unlocked that morning with his casual, "How would you like to learn to swim?" For Brenda, being born with spinal bifida, or open spine, meant hauling around 20 pounds of metal leg braces and crutches. Though it did not cause total paralysis, the imperfect closure of the discs at the base of her spine had left her with limited muscular control below the waist and an awkward waddling gait. But in the water, her awkwardness turned to grace. For the first time in her life, it was not the weakness in her legs that counted, but the strength in her arms and shoulders. Brenda had seen the Olympic Games on TV and thrilled to the images of swimmers competing for medals. As she practiced that summer, visions of those swimmers danced in her imagination. "Someday I'll be one of them," she thought. As long as she didn't tell anyone what she fantasized, Brenda figured they couldn't tell her that people with physical disabilities did not become athletes, let alone Olympians. When she was 10, Brenda tried out for the community pool swim team. "Those of you who make the A team will be our starters. If you need more work, you'll swim on the B team," said the coach. As Brenda stood there in line, her head filled with all the things she wanted to tell the coach. "So what if I can't balance well enough to start off the diving blocks? I'll make it up in the water. Just give me a chance on the A team and I will work my heart out." But the coach saw a kid who walked like a duck. The fact that she could also swim like one didn't seem to count. Brenda, B team. Second best, she thought angrily. Her parents had always told her, "You can do anything you want to do." So she worked on her timing, her freestyle form, her breathing until she could hold her own with the top swimmers. But the coach never noticed. Then, when she turned 14, the swimming came to a terrifying halt. For weeks that summer, Brenda had been nauseated, achy, and feverish. When her fever spiked to 105 degrees, her parents rushed her to the hospital. As she lay delirious, she heard the doctor tell them, "The infection has gone to the bone. If we cut out the infection portion of the heel, I think we can save her leg." The problem, the doctor explained, stemmed from a cut on her foot that had become infected. With no sensation in her feet, Brenda had not felt the pain that would have signaled life-threatening infection. As she was wheeled off to surgery, her nausea turned to fear. "Please don't cut my leg off," she prayed. The moment she awoke from the anesthetic, she grabbed for her calf. "It's okay, Brenda," her mother reassured her. "You still have your leg." Surviving the series of operations that were required to fight the infection over the next 3 years took every ounce of Brenda's strength. When at last she blasted out into the sunlight soon after her 17th birthday, she was too busy catching up with life to even think about swimming. Bent on blending in, Brenda vaulted into adulthood, bypassing college and landing a computer graphics job at a large engineering firm. She married and began climbing the corporate ladder, and yet something made Brenda keep swimming. Perhaps it was the pang she felt when her Uncle Mel suffered a stroke and began looking to her as his role model. "All I have to do," he told her as he struggled to adjust to a wheelchair, "is think about what you did as a kid in that pool." "Oh, that was that was years ago," she insisted. But each time she entered the water, she became that kid again, pushing herself to the limit. "You're wasting your time with me," urged Frank Braxton, a friend from church she had corralled into doing laps with her. "You need to get into some real competition." "And be the only disabled swimmer on the team? I've been there, and it's no fun," she insisted. "No racing for me ever again." But on a May afternoon, a stranger's challenge changed everything. When Paul McDowell spotted Brenda on the sidelines of a wheelchair racing demonstration, sponsored by the club her Uncle Mel had joined, he saw in her eyes the intensity of a serious athlete. Wheeling toward her, he said, "You're dying to try it, aren't you?" In the 25 years since an auto accident had put him into a wheelchair, Paul McDowell had competed in national marathons and trained dozens of road racers. He could spot winners early on. "All right," she said, "just once." She swung into the chair, touched the wheels, and the light-weighted racer sailed across the pavement. Deftly, she maneuvered, lost in the sensation of speed, of control, of the power of her arm muscles over the rubber and steel beneath her. But when she wheeled back to McDowell, she said, "That's it for me." "Oh, no, it's not," he shot back. "It's just the beginning." That winter, Brenda's deteriorating leg muscles and knee joints forced her into the hospital for surgery. Flat on her back, she felt the inevitable closing in. For years, she had fought doctors who tried to tell her that braces were putting too much strain on her legs and accelerating the muscular deterioration associated with spina bifida. Nothing, she insisted, would be worse than life in a wheelchair. Now she saw that she no longer had a choice. But in her mind's eye, she also saw Paul McDowell proving that people in wheelchairs didn't have to wither away. That spring, 30-year-old Brenda entered her first wheelchair race and brought home a trophy. When she joined an organization for disabled athletes called the Achilles Track Club, McDowell was the first person she saw. He greeted her news with an "I told you so" grin. With McDowell's encouragement, Brenda began a vigorous training regimen. Soon she was turning heads at marathons by beating veteran wheelchair athletes. "If you keep on the way you're going, you could wind up at the Paralympics someday," he told her that spring. "The what?" "It's the world's top competition for elite athletes with physical disabilities," he explained. Begun in 1960 in Rome with athletes who'd had spinal cord injuries, it had expanded to include elite-level athletes with other physical disabilities. The next one is in Barcelona right after the Olympics. There'll be about 4,000 athletes competing. "What do I have to do to get there?" Brenda asked. Let's take it one step at a time, he cautioned. First, there's the Southwest Regional meet you're competing in next month in Arlington, Texas. People from all over the country will be there, working towards spots on the U.S. Paralympic teams. The number of Paralympic qualifying steps on McDowell's list was long, and the caliber of competition daunting. Paralympic athletes were grouped into categories according to their level of physical function. Competition would be fierce. Many of these people work out full-time, McDowell said. Well, I work full-time, Brenda said. To make any kind of showing, I'll have to step up my evening swim workout. So that explained Brenda's explosive power in the wheelchair. You're a swimmer too? McDowell asked. Swimming is from another lifetime. No big deal. It is a big deal, he said. I want you to start gearing up for these swimming events in Arlington. The Texas meet was a revelation. While Brenda performed well in the wheelchair competition, she blew the swimmers out of the water, beating every freestyler in her category. These times are phenomenal, McDowell said. You've got a serious shot at the U.S. Paralympic swim team. McDowell began prodding her relentlessly. You're being totally unrealistic, Brenda, thinking you can double sport in Barcelona. You'll be up against talent far beyond anything you've seen so far. By rights, you should have begun elite-level training in a single sport years ago. That could only mean swimming, the sport she associated as much with humiliation as with reward. I need to do some thinking, she said. Into the fall, she trained with McDowell, perfecting her wheelchair technique while training at the pool on her own. Also watching Brenda's development was fitness trainer Evan Brody at the club where she did her weight training. What you've been doing so far is about 1/6 of what a Paralympic level athlete ought to be doing, he told her one morning in February. You can't go much further on sheer talent, and you need to focus on one sport. As Brenda listened, she realized that McDowell had been right. With the Paralympics only 6 months away, it was time to forget road racing, hire a swim coach, and throw herself into her childhood dream. Brody and his colleague Karen Sanders proposed a tightly controlled diet and exercise program. Normally it takes 3 years to peak as an Olympic-level athlete, Brody explained. By training all at once around your full-time work schedule, we run the risk that even if you bulk up, you'll start slowing down in the pool. Or you'll speed up but damage your muscles in the process. You want to think it over? It's now or never, Brenda answered. I got to go for it. Working with Brenda's swim coach, Terry Komlowski, Brody set out to pull the absolute maximum from Brenda's muscles. To measure her maximum aerobic capacity, the efficiency with which her muscle cells extracted oxygen from the blood, Brody and Sanders put her through the maximum test. The results stunned them. You're off the scale in terms of speed and endurance, said her coach, for female wheelchair athletes. In fact, these numbers are at the high end of the scale for males. The vast majority of athletes can train their whole lives and never get as much out of their muscles as you are, said Brody. You've got everything that most people would kill for. Brenda looked at Brody and Sanders, trying to absorb what they were telling her. There was no mistaking the look of awe on their faces. For the first time in her life, Brenda felt she could realize her childhood dream. Many nights when she dragged herself to her car after swim practice, she thought of what the numbers meant. But there were days when she was so exhausted that even this wasn't enough to keep her going. Why am I doing this to myself? She scribbled in her training log more than once. Each time, though, someone was there to remind her, her parents, her swim coach, her supervisors at work, and always there was her Uncle Mel, in failing health following a second stroke, calling late at night, giving her status reports on his efforts to help raise the $5,000 for her trip to Barcelona. I won't be there to see you win your medal, he told her, but I believed in you from day one, and I'll be with you all the way. On many days through the spring and early summer, Barcelona seemed far off indeed. Brenda and her husband had separated. Then her beloved Uncle Mel died. But through it all, Brenda never considered giving up. Over the next couple of months, Brenda dropped 11 seconds from her 100-meter backstroke time and 6 seconds from her 100-meter freestyle. "You're ready," Brody said finally when Brenda won 5 gold medals in July at the National Swimming Finals in Atlanta. "You were born to race and you're going to do it." On a hilltop overlooking Barcelona, the Paralympic torch glowed against the night sky. Sitting with Evan Brody just outside the Paralympic village, Brenda was lost in thought. She was about to race for the medal she had dreamed of all her life, and her stomach was churning. Brenda's classification, an 8 out of 10, was going to pit her against swimmers with enough use of their legs to be able to dive off the blocks, a tremendous advantage when victories are measured in hundredths of a second. Her physiological testing had overclassified her, but nothing could be done about that. From her pocket, Brenda pulled a computer printout listing the records of the swimmers in her category. "Look at these times, Evan," she burst out. "Priya Cooper from Australia, a full second ahead of me, is going in, and she's 17, half my age. The German woman, Britta Seegers, and Rebecca Bornman from Canada. I'll be the only one starting in the water. How can I possibly compensate for the edge these others get from a diving start?" "You're going to do what you've always had to do," Brody said, "and that's to be just a little bit better, a little bit faster." Brenda tensed for the signal that would begin the 50-meter freestyle. Behind her, the 7 other women took their places on the blocks as she clung to the wall. "All my life I've had to be just a little faster," she repeated. At the starting signal, Brenda shot forward. Oblivious to the noise of the crowd, she dissolved into an arc of muscle, speed, and grace. Stroke by stroke, she gained on the pack. She was on Bornman's shoulder, then neck and neck. Slowly, she pulled ahead of the Canadian, still behind Cooper, and nearly even with Seegers. In a final lunge, she touched the wall, surfaced a hairbreadth behind Seegers, and turned to watch the numbers light up on the board. 36.60. Brenda knew she had swum faster than ever before, only 22 hundredths of a second behind silver medalist Britta Seegers. She had won the bronze. She had done her country proud. "Representing the United States of America," the announcer boomed as Brenda approached the podium to receive her medal. Her eyes gleamed, and she wore the smile of a little girl, now a woman born to race. And then it says here, in addition to this individual triumph, Brenda also won a gold medal as a member of the 100-meter freestyle relay team. Great story. All right. I'm going to read from some legal opinion and arguments. Okay, ready? With respect to the comment concerning days of depositions, this is a case in which, unfortunately, discovery has been long and complex, and already we have had quite a number of days of discovery. The president of the McDonald's Group has had his deposition taken for some 2.5 days. The vice president of the McDonald's Group has had his deposition taken for some 3.5 days. The vice president of Gibson Savings has been deposed for real estate. The vice president for marketing of Gibson has been deposed 4 days on those. It has been proposed that we depose the former managing officer for the Huntington Beach Company, another partner. We are flying to San Francisco on Thursday to do that. Mr. Goodwin, who is the president or officer in charge of real estate for Huntington Beach Company, also is going to be deposed. This is a case, unfortunately, in which a lot of questions are being asked and being asked for a multitude of days. I think what is critical here, and we got off the track since the last discussion, is the question of the use of these particular premises. It was a use that Huntington Center bargained for, which was to put in a savings and loan association. That is what they wanted. They were paying for it directly by giving a very a very lone rent. That is what we are. We find the critical issue here in terms of the moving in this competitive motion here. And I said motivation here, which Mr. Kolber has responded to with great effort and great effect, great abundance. What we're talking about here is anti-competitive intent and anti-competitive effect, which are causing damage to the Huntington Center. As this court is aware, those are the two elements which must be shown, any competitive intent and effect. Here, counsel for Huntington Center is being damaged along with Gibson by virtue of this particular approach. One thing again we have, I think, in the last discussion, gotten a little bit off track here. What we're talking about is a contract. And if we spoke and limited ourselves to the contract alone, we have a situation here where Huntington Center did not give its consent. There is no question it did not give its consent. It refused to give its written consent. Instead, the contention is being raised by Coast that you have waived your rights. Those are questionable issues. They are not legal issues. They are rising under the contract. Opposition is that if they are going to be allowed to raise equitable issues in this particular action, that we have the right to also raise equitable issues. That is the question of unfair competition or anti-competitive considerations running to the very transaction at issue. Okay, and that concludes our literary and jury charge for the 180 class. Have a great day.